So I'm going to show a really simple soldering technique of how to join two pieces of metal together. So it's two pieces of copper, so they're different sizes. So we need to make sure that both pieces of metal are heated to the same temperature. They also have to be really clean, so these have been cleaned with some wire wool already, so extra clean. And the piece that's going on has to fit completely so that there's no gaps. And also that needs to be cleaned so that they fit together. Okay, so then we need some flux, so we're using borax flux. So a handy hint, just to get it so it's in, blow off any residue, and then print where you want it to go, so you don't put too much flux on. The flux keeps the metal clean as well as helping the solder flow. So make sure there's a little bit of flux on both sides so the metal doesn't oxidise when you're soldering. So that's there, ready to go. I'm using hard solder, and that's hard because it's higher melting temperature, not that it's difficult. So I've rolled the end slightly, so to make it a little bit thinner, so we have small little pallions. So if we cut little fingers down the solder, and then you just have your finger over the end so they don't fly across the workshop, and just very, very carefully snip off some tiny little pieces of solder and put them into the flux. So that's ready for when we get to that point. I'm just going to make sure there's flux on the top. Okay, so now it's going to get a little bit noisy because I need to put the compressed air on for the torch. But we're going to heat up the metal so that the borax, the flux, heats up, so all the excess moisture comes out of it, and then it settles down to being like a glassy grey colour, and then we're going to put the solder on. If you put the solder on at this point, when the flux is wet, when the flux bubbles up, then the solder can go somewhere completely different. Okay, so some compressed air on. So we're going to start off with a really soft, bushy flame just to warm everything up. Okay, a little bit more flux, just it's a little bit light on that side. Just heat this up again. Okay, so now to put our little bit of solder on. So we want that at one end and making sure that it touches both pieces of metal. There we go. And the important thing is to make sure that you don't heat the solder directly. You're heating the metal to melt the solder. So we're going to have a hard directional flame, and I'm going to make sure I don't heat the solder directly, but I'm also focusing a lot of the heat on the bottom piece because that's a larger piece of metal. So the key is to look out for this solder here and watch it. It will, when both pieces of metal get to the same temperature, the solder will run along using a capillary action. There you go. So I'm not sure if you saw, but when the solder melted, it runs round. So solder won't jump a gap. Everything has to be touching. Everything has to be really clean. But also you need both pieces of metal to be the same temperature. So once it's cooled down a little bit, so you don't shock the metal, we can just quench it. And then you've got a simple solder. Okay, a nice neat solder. We then put it into the pickle to clean it, to clean all the excess borax and oxidation off it, but yeah, the metal will break before the solder joint.